Hi and welcome back to my actually second video about layouts. And today we already talked about the Flex layout, and due to technical problems I'm starting again with the grid layout, and which is not based on any Sencha grid layout, but it's a new grid layout. But if you ask HTML or CSS pros and what are the basics of layout, you will always hear it's Flex and grid layout. So that's why I would like to talk about the grid layout now, and I hope you enjoy it. So let's take a first look at my layout. Let me just add the browser to the screen. Yeah, this one. Okay, cool. So now you should be able to see the, it seems to be a bit off. Let me just move it over to this side. This one, sorry for that. So this one get a bit of location like this. Okay, way better. Okay, so what you can see in here is to the right side in my browser, you can see that I have a header. Let me just get rid of this. Okay, this header, this is a so-called hero part, which is the biggest part at all. It's about 50% of the full screen. Then we got the block part, a sidebar, and the end. And let's take a look at the main JS, the main view, to see how all of this got set up. So in here I got my main, and in the main, let me just scale this up. You can see that I got all these items underneath each other. So there's the header, the hero, the main, the sidebar, and the footer. And although the sidebar and the main part are next to each other, it seems that there is nothing in here that supports that. That is due to the grid layout. And how the grid layout works, now let me get back to the developer console, choose the top bar, and as always we can press this grid button in here to see the overall layout. Let me just scale this down so that we get more of the view here. Okay, so what do we have? We have certain grid areas in here. So let's start with how to read that. Let me just get this alternative writing in here. So getting rid of this, and let's just for a second get rid of that. So because this way it's a bit easier to read. So we do, what am I missing? Oh, I missed to this one. Okay, so we do have columns, and I added them as template columns. How the writing is, I'll go a bit more into details as soon as I explain this. And then I will explain how the grid layout overall is structured. So the columns are defined as 1FR. FR stands for the same as the Flex layout, if you say 1 Flex. So we could add up 1FR plus 5FR plus 2 plus 1 to get the full width description, and that adds up to 9. So this one will be 1 out of 9, 5, 2, and 1 out of 9. And this is 1, 5, 2, and 1 area. This min-max says it has to have 5FR, but at least 30 EM. So if I scale this down, let me scale that down, you can see that everything moves over, but at a certain point, the sides, the 1FR, gets lost, and these they still have the 30FR and the 15FR, not FR, EM. So that's how to read that. Then I define my rows, and the first one is 10 EM. So this one is in height 10 EM. This one is 50 out of 100. This is what 50 from height says. Then we get an auto part, which is as high as the content needs it. So if I scale this down in width, we need more space for the sidebar. And if I scale, get this wider, you can see that I need less space in height. That is what auto means. And then again, the end, the footer takes up 10 EM. So we have 10 EM, 50 out of 100, 10 EM, which are all fixed values. And then we get this auto part. And then we define a header area, and we say that all these 4 areas, which is 1FR, 5FR, 2, and 1, all these 4 get the header information. All 4 get the hero information. It's all over these. Then we get something that is empty, which is empty, the same as at the end. Then we get the main part for our blog, the sidebar, and again the footer all over the place. So that's how we define the grid layout. We can define it the same way using the template. Let me just get this in here, this one over here. Oh, I lost the template. Somehow I must have lost the main part. No, like this, template, double point, okay. So this one would be the same definition. It says, my first row has a height of 10 EM and consists only of header. The next row gets a height of 50 and consists only of hero. The next one is an empty main sidebar, empty, and has a height of auto. And again, the same for the footer. And at the end, with this backslash, we define what the column definition is. And we get the same result. So using the template or template column defines for me all these information. Let's take a look at the code in here, where we see that we get the template rows, template columns, grid areas, and the column gap, which I added in here. And all these information we add through the grid layout. So let's take a look at the grid layout. We have that within source, layout, grid. Should be in here. Did I got this wrong? Let me just see, because there's an error displayed in here, and I should try to get rid of that before I continue. It says we didn't really close the layout, right? So we have the template. Oh, okay. So the template should be closed here. No, that's the template, and with the comma, and then we get this. Okay, so now that we fixed that, let me just go back to the grid. Let me scale up the size. Okay, so what do we need from a layout? I started with the auto layout, and added my own definition so that you can write type grid for a layout. So we write alias with a namespace layout and adding the grid. This one is just for convenience, because when I looked through all the other layouts, it said like, is flex true and so on. So I added in here, is grid true. And then I'm adding the config. Within the config, I'm adding template columns, template rows, template area, template. This is what we are now using. Before that, we were using these three, but now I'm using template. Then we add column gap, row gap, and gap. So this basically says, yeah, add the same gap to row and column, and here we can specify the different gaps for columns and rows. Then I'm adding the main CSS, which is x minus layout grid, which should be in here. Let me just see. Let me open the CSS so we can easily see what's in there. So x layout grid element. And if we take a look in here, it says x layout grid. So this is the x layout grid. Then the base item CLS should be layout grid item. So each item in here should come with the X layout grid item. And then I'm adding the X layout grid header just for convenience, so that you can easily add a specific CSS to the grid area header. So as you can see in here, it defines a grid area header. And that happens due to my adding of the, let me just scale this down a tiny little bit. So I'm adding that one on item add. As soon as an item gets added, I'm adding grid area and the grid area name. And the grid area name was defined per item. Means as soon as I add grid area with a string, this one gets added as the CSS grid area, so that the CSS knows, oh, okay, so this is the header component, and I have to split it over all these 4 rows. And that's basically it. Now, the most important part in this, in the grid definition, is that I'm adding this set target style. In here, for example, I'm saying, okay, add grid gap, gap. Or let's say for the template which we are currently using, grid template, template. So in here, where's my grid? Let me just, here. So in here, we're getting, let me just get more room for that. In here. So the grid template rows, grid template columns, all can be found here. Grid template rows, grid template columns. This all gets added to the X body element, which is, let's just see what set target style means. We are trying to get from the container of the current item where we are adding the layout, the render target. And the render target is always the item which directly holds the child items. And in our case, that is the X body element, which holds the header, which holds the hero part, and so on. So that's what we are trying to get to set all these values to. So in here, we have get the render target. And then we're setting the style key value, which we are passing through from all these different things. It's very basic. It's nothing very special, which shouldn't be that hard to understand if you're getting a bit more into the getter, setter, apply, and update. I explained that in my last video about the flex layout. And this is exactly the same. We're taking the template config which automatically generates the update template function. And on update template, we are setting the style to the layout target container. And that's what we're doing in here. So let's take a look at another item which I added as a grid layout. In here we do have the block item, which gets the X- layout grid in here, and which holds the X layout grid element, which is our grid. And you can see in here, let me just zoom in. And you can see now that we have a definition which is a bit different. So what we can see right now in here is that we get 1FR, 3FR, which means this is 1, 2, 3. This has a width of 1 out of 4, and this 3 out of 4. And then we are defining the areas as card image and card image over 2 rows. So this means that we get this full area for a single graphic. And then we are adding the title on top here. And we are adding the card content, which is the lower part. And let's take a look how this was set up. So we're going into our block item. Let me just close this again, scale this up. So what we're doing in here now is that we are adding 3 areas. Again, it's just specified as all the items are not somehow added via different layouts. It's just a single layout with all the items underneath each other. It's the image, the label, and the container. But due to our definition, template definition, it exactly knows how to lay up all of this. And in here, we are adding our custom item, which has a config image, a config title, and a config content. And then we're just updating image, and we fill this card. In here, I wrote a method which actually gets everything into place. But the main thing is really that we have a layout grid type, a template which defines it, and as soon as I scale everything down, it should actually just, yeah. Oh, was missing this. Let me just scale this down again. And now you can see that it pops into a different not layout, but styling with the dividing bar in here. And if I get it larger, I get cards. And all this can be done using the responsive SCSS. Let's just get quickly into that. And for the responsive one, we can just set, okay, just place everything underneath each other. So the header, hero, main, sidebar, and footer are all underneath each other. And that easy, we can have a responsive layout for our full page. And with the cards changing style a bit, so there's just a dividing line. It's no longer that we have to have these cards because they're supposed to be underneath each other. And yeah, so that's basically the grid layout. Oh, did I? Sorry for that. So let me just close this again. Okay, so this is the grid layout, and there's just a tiny little bit of SCSS to it. Let me scale this up, get this into view. It's just that we have to tell the target element that it's always display grid. And we need to get over some issues. We have to have all grid items with an overflow of initial, which means it allows an overflow. Otherwise, the items wouldn't be scrollable. So it's just these basically 2 lines of code that allow us to add the grid layout to work. If there's anything you need to know, please let me know, and I will probably cover this in another video. So if you right now have any questions, just write it to the chat. We do have a delay of 11 seconds roundabout, so I will wait for about a minute to see if anyone types anything. If not, then yeah, thanks a lot for your time. I hope you enjoyed this class about grid layout, and I find it very helpful for certain stylings and to get all my items underneath each other so that I can relay out them at any time I want, just changing the template. So from the chat, I'm not getting any answers, so thanks a lot for your time, and I hope I see you soon. Bye.